From Nutrien Ag Solutions, this is Senior Meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story for Monday, October 17th, 2022. We'll start out looking at temperatures across the prairie, anywhere from, 5 below to 8 above as you make your way from west to east. Or really, I should say from east to west. Warmer in the west, cooler in the east as we get started here this week. And really quiet across the prairie. The reason for that, a highly amplified pattern that's got high pressure in place across at least much of western Canada. The eastern portion of the prairie here feeling the influence from this cutoff low, slowly moving through the Great Lakes. As I animate this, you can see the flow of the jet stream coming up over the top of that ridge, across British Columbia and Alberta, almost down off screen or up off the screen there at the top. Then it swoops down here around the base of that jet stream. We've got a little branch of stronger flow here across the Gulf Coast as well, but high pressure in place across much of the prairie right now. That's going to define a rather quiet week. Another mild few days, especially in Alberta, western Saskatchewan. You'll be, increasingly mild across portions of Manitoba as we head deeper into the week as well. And then the bigger story in this forecast video is not so much what happens this week, but what happens this weekend into next week. And that is going to be a complete 180 reversal of the pattern. Now, I just drew this for you on the satellite animation we just looked at, but here's the jet stream. Again, stronger flow coming up over the top of that ridge, down around the base of the trough, giving us high pressure here across western Canada, but an area of low pressure here across the Great Lakes. So warmth across the west, cooler temperatures across the east. As we get going, though, through the end of the week, high pressure stays in place, but look what happens here this weekend into early next week. Big change. We flatten out the ridge, a couple waves come in here, and it's this one right there over the weekend that dives in across the western United States and sets up a pattern that, again, a 180 reversal. This is the next 5 days, ridge west, trough east. And then you look at days 5 through 10, trough east, ridge west. This sets up a very different picture across the Canadian prairie. One that takes us from mild conditions in the west to cooler conditions in the west, shifting the warmth off to the east. The other change, shifting us from a drier pattern across western Canada to one that's going to offer at least 1 or 2 chances for some organized precipitation, again, as we get into days 5 through 10. So here's an animation of, when this pattern shift happens. This is the look on Monday morning, October 17th. Ridge west, trough east, as we look at the pattern across North America. We get going through the next few days. I am going to let this play, but then bring it back and go slowly here. So this is your Monday, your Tuesday, your Wednesday. We're continuing to kind of reinforce that ridge. This is still a stout ridge midweek with that trough slowly making its way off to the east across the Great Lakes, across the eastern United States. You can see another little couple of waves trying to push in here as we get into the end of the week. And this is when we start that transition. Here's we get into Friday, we've got some stronger jet stream flow making its way across the prairie. We're starting to see some of these waves try to make their way in from the northwest to try and break down the ridge that's in place right there. And it eventually does happen here. Your date is going to be up here. This is around Friday, getting into the weekend. And here's where we see that first trough finally successfully make its way in across the Pacific Northwest and across western Canada, again, as we get into the weekend here. So this is your Sunday. Getting into Monday, another wave comes in on the backside here. We're reinforcing this trough, getting it into, the early and then middle part of next week. So this is a weekend into next week pattern shift. And, high confidence in this happening, but I'm going to show you the precipitation loop and understand that the change happening here, days 5 through 10, we're going to have low confidence in the exact track of these waves and where they may produce some of the heavier precipitation. So looking at this as in a macro, scope here, knowing that we changed from mild and quiet to a bit cooler and a bit more unsettled as we get into the coming weekend, early next week. Your precipitation forecast, though, over the next few days, really quiet across the Canadian prairie. I'm kind of rocking back and forth over the next 3 days. This takes us into, this would be Thursday, October 20th, getting into Friday, maybe seeing a little front come through with some lighter precipitation. That's not the big change. That really starts to happen here as we get into the weekend. Here you go. This is Saturday and Sunday. You can see these bigger areas of low pressure trying to kind of dive in and then lift across the prairie. And then how exactly that happens, the track of these systems, the intensity of the systems, that's going to make all the difference in the forecast here over the weekend into early next week, meaning, maybe scattered showers or Are we talking about bringing a corridor of some snow in here, which is certainly on the table as we get into the last week of October? The confidence is high in this change, but the confidence is low in the exact track of some of these precipitation makers. But check out these next 10 days of temperatures across the prairie. Here's your shift, a complete 180 in Calgary. Highs in the lower 20s for the next few days. Those highs will be in the lower single digits by the time we get to next week. Edmonton, same story. 20 degrees for your highs today, tomorrow, the next day. You'll be talking about highs around 4 degrees as we get to this time next week. Saskatoon, very similar look. Regina, a similar look. You notice you just kind of shift things a few days as you make your way to the east. And then in Manitoba, as promised, you're cooler now, but you warm up as we head through the next few days. We shift the pattern, build a ridge over the east. That allows the warmth to move east. Your high temperatures will be in the lower to middle teens as we get through the late week into the weekend, but bigger trough. It's really going to encompass all of Western Canada. You'll feel the cool down as well as we get into next week. So mild and quiet for the next few days. Big changes, though, as we get into the weekend and early next week. Have a great Monday and a wonderful rest of your week.